Welcome back to the Safe Room, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, the President Sean Williams. It's been a while since I've been on the mic. I might be a little rusty, so don't blame me, okay? But today we have a fantastic guest, and this is someone I actually connected with from last year. I think it was around the election time that we met for the first time, and she was absolutely phenomenal, and I had to get her on the podcast. And this name might be very familiar to all the little voters back at the time. Last year, Amanda Coombs is here on the podcast. Amanda, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. And today's just a beautiful day outside. So it increases my mood. It makes me feel happier. And I'm looking forward to going for a walk after with my dog. Get some vitamin D. Yeah.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm so glad to have you on the podcast. Again, like I mentioned before, we connected back last year. I believe it was a sort of like a community session. So we had all the different candidates. You were one of the candidates at the time being, and I was sitting down, I heard you spoke, and I was like, yo, she is someone that really puts the community first. And that's what I absolutely love, especially me, someone growing up in near the Jane and Finch community. So for me, I'm at Jane and Wilson, but being near that my entire life and having someone that really speaks to some of the issues or wants to connect with the community residents, that's something that I feel we don't see a lot in terms of leadership. So I was so impressed to have you, say yes to this episode, because I definitely wanted to talk about your past community work, just you being within the more political sphere. I don't want to get too deep into that because I know there's might be issues with the confidentiality. So I'm going to be very curious with my questions.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. All right, perfect.
Excited to be here.
Yes, of course. Like I said, I might be a little rusty. Like I said, the last time I technically recorded an episode was about 2 to 3 weeks ago. So we'll see.
That's okay.
We'll see. Okay, but before we get into the actual questions, we always start with our main segment, which is the hot seat. And basically, it's just 4 simple questions, and just make sure that you answer them to your best abilities, okay?
Okay.
All right, perfect. So question number 1. So outside of your work, as a leader, someone who deals in the community, tell me something about yourself in 1 sentence.
Something about myself in 1 sentence. I am a mother to a teenager, and I love nature and taking long walks and scenic drives.
That's beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful. Especially the nature part. Yo, I feel most people are just ready to just kind of stay inside their house and just kind of be cooped in. But you embrace the nature. You go outside. You just take in all the fresh air. And I know, like you mentioned before, outside is getting a little bit more warmer by the day. So sooner or later, I'm gonna have to start taking initiative and going back outside, because sometimes being inside your house, yes, your house is your covenant. You want to be safe, but sometimes you need to leave. You need to leave the house and just go talk to people.
Those walks are relaxing and therapeutic.
Absolutely. Okay. Question number 2. Your favorite attire to wear when you're going out to a social event?
If I'm going to a social event and it's not maybe a work meeting, I would prefer to wear a blazer and maybe fitted pants and a blouse. If it's more casual and relaxed, then I'll put on a jeans. But I absolutely love sweatsuits. If I could wear sweatsuits 365 days a year, I would.
Yeah, I feel you too.
Yes, I think we all have a pair of Nike Techs in our closet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. But nah, I do like how you have that little classy vibe with the blazer and everything. You always want to look good. I feel like for me, if I'm heading to an event, I always try to overdress anyone who's there. And I don't know if that's a bad thing at first, but to me, I started taking it you know what? It is what it is. I'm trying to be the most dressed everywhere I go.
Why not?
Yeah.
First impressions are the best. People often look at the way that you present yourself, your clothes, and then everything else after.
Of course. That's how it's gonna be for me, and I'm glad that you have that same type of mindset. You're dressing to impress.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Going on to the next question. An interesting fact that you rarely share about yourself.
An interesting fact that I rarely share of myself. I used to be a fitness instructor. I worked at Planet Fitness and I taught 5 of their classes. Yes.
Oh, wow. You did kind of looking at you from the first time, I'm like, she probably looks like she at least like exercise every single day, make sure that she keeps like a healthy
I
lifestyle.
used to. I am experiencing the same side effects as everyone else during the pandemic, where like we just lost that motivation to go to the gym. They were all closed down. So now I'm starting to get back into shape.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I definitely feel. I always tell myself that, working out or being like very fit is not just like, oh, lifting weights and doing this and that. It's also like eating right, but also it's having a healthy mindset. Sometimes it's not about, oh, I need to do like 20 sets of this or 20 reps of that. Sometimes it's like if you can do like 5 to 10 minutes of like stretching or like one movement of an exercise, that's at least doing something than rather just not doing anything at all.
absolutely right. And I used to tell my clients when I was doing personal training, it starts in the kitchen. Like if you have an unhealthy diet and you can work out hours each day, it's not going to make a difference. You have to change your diet. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. And again, that's a very interesting fact. Again, I had that type of sense, but the fact that you said it kind of confirmed my thoughts inside my head.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Going on to the final question for this segment. What is your personal safe room?
So my personal safe room, and I do work as a counselor, is and something I tell my clients as well is to find a place in your mind that you can always escape to, no matter what setting you're in or environment you're in. And for me, that was a trip that I took to the Bahamas with my son, and just being on that beach, laying down in the sun, and walking along the hot sand and splashing in the water. That is my safe place when I need to relax and I need to be calm. No matter if I'm in a meeting, if I'm in a stressful situation, I take myself to that safe place.
I absolutely love it. And is the Bahamas? Is that like your background?
No, I just took a trip there with my son, and it was like a memorable trip. It was an absolutely gorgeous island, and there was a lot of things to do. And most of our time we spent on the beach laying down, and it was a safe space, and it was beautiful.
That's really good. I think the last time I went to a beach like outside of Toronto was like years ago. I'm talking like when I was like 8. Like I'm 22. It's been a while. So like maybe I need to start like maybe I need to go back to Grenada because like that's my background and everything. Grenada and the Caribbean. So
Grenada's
like maybe I need to go
beautiful.
back. It is.
That's on my list of places to travel to.
It's no, it's really good, man. Like the beaches are wonderful and the people there are just so nice.
Yeah. I agree. I've been meeting a lot of people from Grenada this year on social platforms. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we actually had a conversation with someone about around last year, and like she works for building a black archive, and like when we connected, and I figured out she was from Grenada too. I was like, wow, like that's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. A lot of virtual platforms and meetings I've been going to is like, you're from Grenada? I'm from Grenada. I'm from Grenada. I'm like, wow. Yeah, we got to start doing some work together.
Yes, you absolutely love to see it. But yeah, that's basically the hot seat segment. Again, I think you nailed all the answers perfectly.
Thank you.
Of course, of course. So yeah, let's definitely get into, some of the things you've been doing very recently. And like I said at the beginning of this episode, for people listening, you've probably heard the name of Amanda Coombs because again, she was running for like, city councilor for the Humber River Black Creek area. And, obviously that must have been such a amazing experience just being part of that. But I did want to ask you just like through the months of going all that and just experience everything, like what was your biggest takeaway from that? Like what was the one thing that you took for yourself that, if someone asked you about it, you were able to kind of express on it more into deeper detail?
There's a lot of things, but I'd say my biggest takeaway was the realization that so many people in our community were not well informed about voting. Like, I came in with the assumption that people knew where to go to vote, they knew how to fill out a ballot, they knew the responsibilities of the different levels of government. They knew that they would be able to vote if they didn't have a voter's card. And I was surprised at how many calls. I got over 80 calls on election day for people that had absolutely no idea of what to do. So that was my biggest takeaway, that people are not well informed when it comes to voting.
Yeah, and like I can definitely expand on that because like there's even like friends I know where I asked them like, "Are you gonna go vote?" And it's just like, I'm not really sure. I don't know how to like really like understand the process of voting. Like, do I just go to a location where it's at and vote? And I feel like that's so important too. Like when you talk about locations, zoning maps, I feel a lot of people get that misconstrued. And then when you think, oh, I went to go vote for that person, but then you realize you go there and you see different names, and it's like, wait, where's this person? I thought I saw them on TV. That almost happened to me. So funny story. I believe so the day of when I had to vote, and funny enough, this election was on my birthday nonetheless. So I think I was just so happy of just celebrating my birthday. I went to go vote at this elementary school I used to go to when I was young, and I did not realize that the zoning maps were different. So before I was like, okay, I'm gonna go, and then basically I go there, I go to pick up the ballot, and then I don't see like any of the like the candidates, the names from the session I was there. I was like, excuse me, like, is this for like the Ward 7, I believe, because I think it was Ward 7, or that was for Humber River Black Creek. It's
Yep,
like, no, this is Ward 6. I was like, since when? I thought the zoning maps were the same. Like, no, they changed. So again, if it wasn't for me realizing that, I would have voted for someone completely different without even like knowing what their platform was. So like again, I feel that is a common mistake for some voters, not
it
understanding
is.
the vote.
Many people were turned away. They went to the wrong community center, they went to the wrong school, and then they were just like, oh, forget it.
Yeah, it was just more of like, well, I'm just not gonna stress myself and go through all this trouble. So like, let's just forget it. Let's hope that everyone comes through. And then like, I also hate when people say that, oh, like, what's the point of voting anyway? Like, nothing's gonna change and nothing significant's gonna happen. Like,
But it's a defeated mindset. Like when you are stuck in a system that's been broken for so many years and that is keeping people systemically oppressed, and you continue to vote for the same person and you don't see those changes, then you start to believe that it's hopeless, right? And that there's no point in vote. I had people tell me that they closed their eyes and did any meeny mo, miny mo to choose um, who to vote for because they said they just don't believe in the system anymore, and that it's already set up to be a certain way and that there's going to be no change at all, right? So yeah, I was getting people to overcome that mindset and then empowering them by giving them that knowledge that they need to
mm,
understand their rights around voting and how to vote.
yeah, that's so important. And again, the fact that you mentioned that people are literally doing eeny miny mo, something that you would probably do for like something very meaningless. Like, let's say you're trying to pick your favorite shoes or like
Yeah,
the food or something like that. Like the
yeah,
fact that like you have like in your hands the chance to make a change in your community, and you kind of just shrug it off, or you don't put as much effort into just thinking about it, then like that kind of shows that there is something that needs to change, or maybe there needs to be like a better job of like letting voters know. Because again,
definitely.
whether you're someone who may not even be about politics. Like, I'll be honest too. Like, I'm not into the full like scheme of politics like 24/7. But I
Yeah,
know when election time comes, I put in so much effort to not only just learn for myself, but I try to like at least talk about on my platform like where to go, or like just the perception of just how like voting works and everything. So I think it's so important to have these conversations somewhere at some point.
I agree. I agree. And a lot of times people think they can't do anything, personally or individually on a micro level, but collectively, we can make a difference. In numbers, there's strength. So if we all come together and we change our mindset, then we definitely can see a difference, not just in community, but systemically.
Absolutely. So I kind of feel like we did kind of touch upon the next question I was going to ask, which is like about the language of politics, or just the languages that's being said, not just like voting, but actually hearing some of the candidates and saying that what their platform's going to be about. And again, for some community members, they just don't have enough time to like retain everything that's being said. So like how would you describe just when you were a candidate, like that experience, that okay, if I want to like really just tell people what I want to do, or what I want to give to the community, how can I describe it so that way community members are left with at least some understanding, so that way they could have the autonomy to think for themselves on what they want to do when the election comes.
I think that we need to remove a lot of the jargon associated with politics. We need to keep the language very simple so that people can comprehend what's being said. When you looked at a lot of the candidates' platforms and even their speech, a lot of the things that they said were hard to comprehend. They were speaking in numbers, they were speaking in percentages. They were given very ambiguous and vague comments when they were asked specific questions of how do you plan to, eradicate poverty, or how do you plan to build more affordable housing. So they weren't very direct with their answers. And I think that using very plain language makes it accessible for everyone else, talking in very short sentences, repeating things when you're asked, to say it again, or even rephrasing how it's being said. And this also keeping in mind that a lot of people who can vote, English is their second language, right? English is their second language. So we need to make sure that not only are we making the material that goes out to residents, that are being mailed out to residents for them to learn about voting or about the candidates, more accessible, but also ensuring that it comes in multiple languages so everybody is able to know their rights when it comes to voting, and how to vote as well. Yeah, so just keeping it very simple and really just addressing the issues that are affecting the people in the community, not speaking to a specific demographic because that's who you identify with, but for everyone.
Yeah, definitely that last part about not speaking to a specific demographic. I feel like, sometimes when you're trying to get a message across, if it talks about, trying to bring community change, it's still that realm where people are trying to target specific individuals, and they're like, okay, yeah, I'm part of that community and that population, but I'm not the only person or only
Yeah,
group from that, population. So I think that's such a important testament for, if you're trying to get a message across. And also, again, I've heard a lot of times where like community residents have said that sometimes the language being said, even for me, I've always said that if you're going to share something about I want to do this and do that, I've always kind of been the very like OCD detailed oriented person. I'm like, okay, if you're gonna do this, like how long is it going to take? Is there an actual step by step? And even I have to realize, for its extent, that's still a lot for community residents, where it's like, okay, you are giving context, but again, not all of us are really engaged with the political sphere, like I mentioned before. Most of the time, we're not really trying to see like what each candidate's doing 24/7, because sometimes those conversations are being held behind doors, and for good reason, because sometimes you can't have everyone in the room. So when you have the chance to actually say what you need to say to the people, to the community, you want it to be as if you're having like a normal conversation with them. And I think that was like something I really caught from you the first time
yeah,
we connected. It was like I could sit there and I didn't feel so like tense, where I had to like really try to remember something else. It's as if I was like watching a lecture, like, okay,
yeah.
okay.
No, we want people to feel it's a collaborative, effort. You want people to feel like they're included in the conversation. They're not excluded because of the way that we're speaking about voting or about politics. And I always try to keep that in mind. I always try to keep that in mind. Yeah, and
Yeah.
just really ensuring, once again, like, context is very important, but ensuring that, like, even though I live in a marginalized community, that I'm still speaking to the homeowners and their needs, not just to the people that are low SES status, and also ensuring that, it is inclusive. Like, I am speaking for everyone, not just a specific population. And that's something that I saw happen a lot during the elections, where like my other candidates were speaking to people who are the voting population. So the people that they know are going to come out to vote and to what their needs are. Yeah.
And I feel like that is the tactic that a lot of like candidates use. Just like, well, if I notice that this population or this percentage is not really going to put in the effort, why am I wasting my time trying to change their mind when nothing really is going to change? Let me just go for the actual like people who are actually going to go for it. Like I always say that with politics, it can be very cutthroat sometimes. So like,
Oh yeah, definitely. I had residents tell me, our buildings are never visited by candidates because they assume that everyone on this building does not have a status to vote. And that really broke my heart, because I was like, it doesn't matter what building a person lives in. That's an assumption, right? It doesn't mean that because it's in a certain pocket of Toronto, or in a certain pocket of the community, that the people that live there don't have voting status. So yeah,
yes,
very sad assumptions. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely true. And like just to like add on to a question, like I said before, you kind of really exemplified that community aspect when you were in your candidacy at the time. So like I just wanted to know like where did that community like roots come from, like, and like could you probably expand a bit on what you experienced or maybe how you participated a lot in the community, because I know when you were sharing some of the things at the time being like you really showed that it wasn't just I'm saying a bunch of community groups because like that's gonna really pop people's eyes. It's like no, like I can really touch upon these because I was there. I was actually in that same position that you guys were in, and I can actually speak towards it. So I just want to know more about like your community background at the time being before you got into like the whole candidacy with the election.
Yeah, so definitely, and that's something I always said that, it's not just something that I'm saying, but, I live this. It's my everyday life. A lot of the issues that affect people on a day-to-day basis, it affects me, it affects my son, it affects my family, my friends, my social circle. And, I always found an interest in applying or, volunteering in leadership positions where I had the ability to make some changes, even if it was on a micro level. And I always try to encourage youth as well when I speak to them. You're in college, you're in university, go into a position where you're able to influence and make changes, not just in your community, but maybe on a systemic level. Don't think about just applying to be the professor, like apply to be the dean, apply to be the director of an organization, right? Apply to be a judge, director of the police station. But think higher, like think what position can I put myself in that will impact and make changes in people's lives, because often we're socially conditioned to believe that we can only be a certain type of person, or we can only be in a certain type of career because of who we are, where we live, or our ethnic background, right? So it's really to change that mindset. And my first leadership, I would say, position in the Humber River Black Creek community was as a tenant representative. And I was happy when I was elected. And I've been a tenant rep now for 13 years. And in that capacity, I had the ability to help residents initiate and start projects in their community, to overcome some of the challenges they were experiencing in their community as well. And yeah, to start some great programs. And then I was able recently to, as well, and something I was doing back then, like lead a volunteer team that goes out and just checks on our neighbors and friends in the community to see if there's anything that they need help with, how we can meet their needs, whether it's financial or practical needs, any resources that we can connect them to. But really, it started as a tenant representative for the building that I currently live in. Yeah.
Yeah, I love how when you were explaining that, you just have that extra effort to go out into the community and really just again connect, collaborate, just talk with people. And I feel like sometimes the biggest ways of like having that change is just going out there and talking to people, just hearing what they have to say, just listening to what are some of the things that's on their mind, and how can you in a certain position that you're in, how can you like offer something that's like, hey, like, do you want me to do this? Or like, how can I, at least talk about it and put some action to it? I feel like, you want to have a perfect balance of awareness and action. Awareness is good, but if there's no action, then it just kind of feels like, kind of
And
like,
community residents are tired of being at the drawing board constantly with nothing being executed, right? We have community developers coming in, sitting down meeting after meeting. This is what we're going to do. We're going to build this. We're going to hire this percentage of people to work on the LRT. And nothing ever comes to fruition out of that. Nothing's ever realized. And I think people are tired of that. So definitely not just listening to everyone's problems or issues, but finding solutions and ways that we can resolve those issues is super important. And I found one thing to be very effective is not just doing this on my own, but connecting with other community leaders such as Anna K. Brown or Butterfly and other
yeah.
community organizations that are doing great work, right? Already in the Humber River Black Creek community.
Shout out to Anna K, shout out to Butterfly. Those two are powerhouses in their own right.
Two powerhouses, definitely.
Yes, yes. So
Yeah.
I think definitely does it also, go back to, capacity, because I think as well when you have people that want to bring that action, sometimes need to have the capacity to actually put out those pieces. Because I always say that with any normal job, you might have a 9 to 5, but I feel like with community work, it's 24/7. Even
It
if
is.
you're off the clock and you're not actually doing hours, you're still talking to people. You may be going on social media, promoting events, or having conversation with people behind doors. I feel like that's always going on 24/7. So I feel like I just want to ask you again, like, do you think capacity also comes into play where people are just kind of like, yeah, I want to do this, but I have like other responsibilities, especially if you're like someone who's already part of an organization, you have responsibilities over there, or maybe if you're like youth and like you have school, and then there's people that want to bring you in because it's like you have like that voice that we want, in certain spaces, so that way we can, expand on these conversations. But it's like I have to deal with my academics. I have a job, so like I feel like capacity also comes into play. So I just want to ask, like, what do you think about capacity when it comes to like community work?
Definitely finding a balance, and you can't sit on every committee and every organization, but definitely finding a balance. And as I do outreach, I realize there are so many like-minded people in the community that want to see the same outcomes that I do, so having them join the team and build in the numbers, so that way community leaders like myself, we don't have to do everything. We have a group of people that can go to these meetings, they can sit in these meetings, they can knock the doors, they can find out what the needs are of the residents, and they can help and kind of share that burden or that load, that sometimes community leaders such as myself have to carry. Because as you mentioned, especially as a tenant representative or as a former candidate for city council, the phone never stops ringing, the door never stops knocking, and people are always trying to call you to seek advice, to resolve issues they're having with their rent, with their kids, whatever it may be. So having a great support system around you and other like-minded people who want to see the same outcome, it helps a lot. And it's all about capacity building. Whenever I see training opportunities for people to gain the skills that they may need to really excel in those areas, I always invite them to come out. Whether it's a grant writing workshop, whether it's learning about social justice issues, communicating effectively with different marginalized groups, I always try to invite people to come out so that way they have that skill set. Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely perfect. Speaking of skill set, it actually transitions perfectly to the next part I want to talk about, which is voter literacy. Now, I saw a post that was probably around last year. It's probably like late last year, like November, and it was talking about voter literacy workshops. First things first, I think this idea is perfect because it kind of extends to what we were talking about at the beginning. Some voters may not have like the true understanding about how to, approach the voting process, and it's not to say that's their fault. I guess sometimes it's just having, the time to really sit down and taking everything, because again we're always so busy with our own like responsibilities that we never really have something like a workshop to say, hey, like here's a space where you could come in and really learn something, whether as just to you have to find it yourself on the internet or like type it like how do I understand this. So I definitely thought when I saw this idea, I'm like, this is really good. So I don't know if that's still in motion because I haven't heard anything in terms of like updates, but I did want to kind of touch upon that.
Yeah. And it is in motion, and it comes from the very first segment, or was the second segment of this podcast, where you asked
Yeah.
what's the biggest takeaway. So trying to overcome that challenge and resolve that issue around people just not knowing anything really about how, when, you know, to vote. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, oh, maybe I should, try to start some workshops, that will help people gain those skills. So the next time voting comes around, they'll be equipped and they'll know what to do, and they can share that knowledge with their friends and family. So it's definitely still on board. It's just that we're in a grant writing process right now because we realize that it's not something that we can roll out without having funding, to ensure that we're able to cover the materials and the space that we'll be utilizing, for people to attend these workshops. So we're hoping to roll it out by March, but we're definitely in like the grant writing stage right now. Yeah.
uh the wretched grant writing stage. I know this stage far too. It's killed me.
Yeah.
Like I've wanted to run projects, workshops, and like I wanted to run a workshop last year in like November in teaching people the skills of podcasting. Little did I know you can't fund a project retroactively. So that's
Yeah.
why I had to
No.
move it and shift it. And I know even just that alone, just putting out the applications, looking for the right funders that match what you're trying to do, it's a pain.
It's time consuming, and especially with politics, there's not a lot of grants or funders that want to get involved. Like right away, when you read the criteria, cannot be used for any type of political events or anything around that. So it's
Yeah,
definitely doing a lot of research and trying to find a grant that
yeah.
fits what we're trying to do.
If you're trying to find a grant, definitely do your research and look. But I will also say this: sometimes you can finesse. Like, so it depends. It depends on the grant. You can finesse where it's like, okay, I can word it like this, even though it's clearly saying I can't do this. At the end of the day, I mean, they're not going to be like they do ask for a report, but they won't actually be at your workshop watching you
Yeah.
24/7.
Yeah.
So
But I can say we've secured some great speakers, people that are employed in different levels of government that are going to come out to facilitate these workshops. So I'm excited about that. Yeah.
okay, definitely. And you know what? I will try my best to, stay updated on that so I can share with all the listeners here in the near future very, very soon. So that's great to hear. Okay, cool. I just want to take a quick intermission and basically this is just kind of like take a break from all the questions because I know this is a lot. So I put down a would you rather section. So basically
Okay.
I will be asking a couple of would you rather questions and unfortunately, I wish I was creative enough to come up with my own, but I'm stealing it from a website. So,
That's all right. Let's get into it.
all right, cool, cool, cool. And I'm gonna try to pick some pretty interesting ones. Nothing too crazy or too weird.
Okay.
Question number one. So, would you rather have the ability to see 10 minutes into the future or 150 years into the future?
Hmm. I think 10 to 15 minutes into the future because of just the way that society is going right now. When I turn on the news, I don't know if there's going to be 150 years. So I'll stick with the 10 to the 15.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's probably the majority rules type of answer too. Like, I mean, I'm not sure why you would want to see 150 years into the future. You're most
I don't
you're
know.
most likely not gonna live to see that long. I mean, yes, it'd be fun to see like okay the evolution of like mankind and everything, but I mean, I would rather see like 10 minutes just to and I think it also depends too how you use those 10 minutes because I'm not sure if it's a permanent thing like every 10 minutes or maybe it's if you choose to. So let's say I don't know, something's happening, you want to know about like a certain like situation that could happen in the next 10 minutes, that would be a little fun to
Yeah,
kind of explore.
definitely. Definitely depends on the context.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay, I'm trying to scroll through to see what are some interesting ones. Okay. Okay, so this one kind of ties back to one of the questions I asked in the hot seat segment. So, would you rather be chronically underdressed or overdressed?
I think chronically overdressed. Because then at least if I'm overdressed, I can always remove, maybe if I'm wearing a suit, I can remove the jacket or, I could, yeah, maybe dress it down a bit. But I wouldn't want to be underdressed because I always want to be able to show up and show out. So no.
Yeah, I feel you, and I definitely agree with that. Like, let's say you overdress, there's ways you could probably take off different layers and everything. Because that's happened to me a couple of times. There's times, if not multiple times, I've come overdressed, and like sometimes people be staring at you, so it's like, okay, you gotta modify yourself and kind of see what can I strip off, what can I remove.
Yeah. What can I take off to just look a little bit more casual? Yeah.
Right, exactly, exactly.
Overdressed definitely. If you're underdressed, there's not much you can do.
Okay, cool, cool. All right, moving on to the next one. Would you rather communicate only in email or never be able to text at all ever again?
Only communicate in email or never be able to text it all again.
And if I'll make it easier on you. Text in terms of like if you have a like iMessage or everything. This does not include like Instagram or like Twitter and all that stuff.
Okay.
Like just like text message and stuff.
Never be able to text again or only communicate by email.
Yeah.
I think that I would probably rather never be able to text again because I think that when we started, well, when texting became like the thing now that everyone does, that it really took away from, that quality time we would spend speaking with people verbally over the phone. Like, we don't even call people anymore to say happy birthday. And that's something I know with my mom, like culturally, she thinks it's disrespectful that, all her children text her happy birthday. And it's just the way that we communicate now. But definitely I do miss like being able to pick up the phone and just have like those long conversations with people or even my family members, and now everything is text. So I think I'd rather not text at all.
I absolutely love that answer because it wasn't just like, I rather the whole email. You actually gave like a really good like reason for it, especially bringing back to like more verbal communication, interaction, like in person. I absolutely love that. And plus, like, I
Yeah.
haven't even been a big texter myself, so like, I wouldn't mind that. But I know a lot of people would probably. I don't know if people could even communicate by email because there's people I know that have like thousands of like unread emails, and like that makes me cringe because I don't
Guilty. I need to hire someone to clear my email. Like, I'm like, they're asking me to buy storage now.
it eventually it catches up to you. It definitely catches up to you.
Yeah.
I'll try to find one more. Okay, final one. So, would you rather always be 10 minutes late or always be 20 minutes early?
I would like to be 20 minutes early. And I always try to make that a habit whenever I have a meeting or if I have an appointment, because it gives me a time just to see the room, the setting, the people that are going to be at the meeting, and then just to spend some time in silence, collecting my thoughts and just thinking about how I'm going to approach, um, this meeting or whatever it is that I need to be at. So definitely 20 minutes early so I can be prepared rather than being late and everyone staring at me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely agree. I feel like for most people, if you don't want to be early, then I feel like you're not having that drive and hunger to be the best at what you're doing. So like, even if it's just something simple as like you're 20 minutes early to like a class or something like that, maybe you have that extra 20 minutes to do something that maybe you didn't get to do if you were so busy, or maybe you get to finish a task or an objective. I feel like you want to be early. If you're late, imagine being 10 minutes late. That applies to everything. So let's for example, let's say you're 10 minutes late to your wedding.
Oh
That's
gosh, that's
that.
bad. People are
Yeah,
going to think you're having second thoughts.
yeah, I know.
Showing up early gives you the best seat. So
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, perfect, perfect. I'm glad that actually went pretty well with the would you rather question. So I'm glad you were able to give your responses. Again, you gave some pretty good responses as well.
thank you.
All right, perfect, perfect. So I do want to close things up a bit, and I did have a closing topic, and we kind of did talk about it throughout the entire episode, but I just kind of want to like really bring it home, and that's having community representation at the forefront, like really making sure that community voice is being heard at all aspects, that residents have a seat at different tables to kind of share what's happening at the community. So like I just wanted to like ask you like what is something that you're trying to do like even more like after like the post election, and still doing things within the community that allow for residents to not only understand what's going on in the community, have a good insight, but also be the facilitators of change in their community as well.
hmm So, yeah, the voter literacy workshops, that's just one avenue. But one of the things I want to focus on this year is really getting out to the communities that often are forgotten about, where people do not visit a lot. So, for instance, like Yellowstone is a forgotten community, especially in Jane and Finch. We have another small complex off of Sentinel. And one response that I got as well, which was a learning curve for me, was that a lot of homeowners feel that they don't get access to a lot of the programs and resources that individuals in marginalized communities get access to. So ensuring that they feel included as well, but doing more outreach, definitely in different neighborhoods in the Humber River Black Creek community, and seeing who wants to come out, who wants to be a leader in various positions in the community, whether it's working with youth, whether it's working with children. I received several grants this year. And one of the things that I did was I was really intentional about who I hired to roll out those grants and to work in like coordinator positions or to lead the youth and children's activities. And yeah, there's a lot of people in the community that have these skills and they want an opportunity to work, but they just don't know where to go or how to go about it. So being sure that there is a way, I'm creating a way for residents in the community to be able to be in leadership positions to create change.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. I know I've been in a couple conversations in different, spaces that kind of talked to that same thing about having that leadership positions. Especially for me, I was in a recent conversation or recent, type of like I want to say research project that talked about having, more hiring process for, students at York University, making
Hmm.
sure that they're able to, at least obtain employment but also gain valuable skills, valuable experience. So that way it allows them to, branch into different, different occupations. I feel a lot of times when people look at community residents, the amount of, resources or job opportunities is kind of limited to a certain standard. It's like you can't really see anyone as a community resident go to like a top 4% like company or something like that, or like you can't really
That
imagine
glass
them.
ceiling.
Yeah, like you can't see them in like, the court system. You can't see them doing this high occupation job that pays very well because there's always been that certain standard or restriction, that's invisible like wall or barrier that's kind of blocking everything of what community residents really do. But I really love how you're trying to bust down that invisible barrier and offer more opportunities to those residents.
Yeah. And letting people know, like, I think it was Bob Marley that said it, like, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. Once again, as I mentioned earlier, it is like we've been socially conditioned to think this way, that, those jobs are out of our reach, or, you have to look a certain way, or you have to be a specific ethnicity in order to obtain, certain careers, which is not true, right? And unfortunately, sometimes we're not given the same type of chances as other individuals. So I'm happy for the work that you're doing, especially with York University, so that maybe we can see more diversity amongst like the executive level of staff and given opportunities to alumni and graduates to be able to come back to the university to teach and to work.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think just like for me, I always try to do the same thing like with the stuff I'm doing. So like whether it's like working in collaboration with York, being part of the Jane and Finch Community Research Partnership, just speaking towards, groups and students about how to have, research in the hands of the community. Like we don't want to just protect any harmful research from coming in, but also how can we put the hands of like research in communities' hands so that way they can, have a say on where it goes, where it gets to be disseminated, where it gets to be placed in certain
I
spaces.
love that. I love
But
that.
also even with my own platform, with my podcast, I always like to connect with individuals like yourself, so that way it builds this whole networking pool where we're always trying to like bounce from each other. I think what's really great is that there have been a lot of incidents where I've had previous guests connect with other guests I've had, and like they've collaborated on projects or they've done certain work in the community, whether it's through a political aspect, an artistic aspect. There's always been something from it, and I feel like because I have this platform, I'm really grateful that I get to have the talks with individuals like yourself, Amanda. Have these talks where if someone is listening, that they might connect with you, and then that might lead to a future project or collaboration, and that could start to see significant change within the community. Like I feel like that's what makes me really joyful of what the platform I have.
Absolutely, absolutely. I couldn't have said it better. Yes, I think this is a great platform, and it's a way for people in the community, even outside the community, as you said, because even Jane and Wilson or Jane and Finch, we share similar experiences when it comes to the things that affect us or impact us, negatively within our communities. So being able to connect with or network with other people that have been on your podcast towards the same cause, we can definitely make more changes on a grander scale.
Yes, absolutely. And just one more quick question before we wrap things up. Like, what would you say for everyone listening to this episode? One thing that they could at least learn from, like, understanding voter literacy. Obviously, the workshops are coming soon for you, and I will let people know when that will be coming out. But for now, what is something that people could really take away about voter literacy, and how can they apply for themselves? So after this, they can look up and they can get an understanding, and then it becomes a chain reaction where, okay, now I understand. How about I share it with someone else who probably doesn't know exactly what voter literacy is? So, like, what would you give to everyone listening right now as like a little piece of advice or a piece to take away in terms of voter literacy?
One of the greatest feedbacks I got to the elections why people don't vote is obviously because they're not well informed, but mostly because they feel that their vote is not going to make a difference. And I want people to know that individually, maybe your vote can't make a difference, but collectively, if we all get together and we say we're going to go out and we're going to vote, it will make a difference. We can definitely put a dent, into some of the systemic issues that we're experiencing as a society and even in our community, right? If we all come together and collectively with that mindset and we say we want to see a change, we want to see somebody elected that lives in the community, that understands the issues that are affecting us. Because when we vote for other people that don't necessarily live in the community or have kids that go to our schools or grocery shop in our community, the issues that we face on a daily basis, they won't advocate for it because it doesn't affect them. It doesn't affect their family. It doesn't affect their children. So if you want to see change, it's important that you elect somebody that, understands a lot of your lived experiences and some of the challenges that you face on a day-to-day basis and will advocate for those things because it affects them as well. And, stay well informed. If you're not sure about how to vote, what the responsibilities of the government are, ask a friend, ask a neighbor. You can call Elections, I think it's Elections Toronto or Vote Toronto, and you can ask questions. There's somebody on the phone. If you don't want to read through all the information on the website, somebody will answer, and you can ask whatever questions that you need to. And don't be afraid to ask questions or ask them to repeat what they're saying or to slow down or, to keep it in plain language so that you'll understand. But collectively, yes, together, we definitely can make a difference.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Yeah, that's about it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you to Amanda, man. Wonderful, wonderful guest.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean. I appreciate the time being here and keep up the great work that you're doing with your podcast and in the community. Thank you for giving us a space to come on to speak about, the issues that are important for us, to us, and to share the work that we're doing in the community.
Yeah, of course, of course. So where can people at least, find you in terms like if they want to contact you, ask any questions?
Yeah. So people can find me at Amanda Coombs TO, either on Facebook or on Instagram. I also have a webpage, www.Back2Basickz Youth Support Services.com. And yeah, those are the main sources of contact right now.
Okay, perfect. I'll make sure to put that in the description. But again, to everyone listening, thank you so much for tuning into another episode of The Safe Room. You can find me on Instagram, on Twitter, on TikTok, and also on YouTube. I'll put all my social media handles in the description. You can check out our website at www.thesaferoompodcast.com. You can subscribe to our newsletter. I'm still working on the January version, but it will be dropping very, very soon. And if you want to be a future guest, make sure you fill out our form on our website as well. Again, we are on the road to episode 100, so
Ooh, it's exciting.
yeah, we're getting closer, man. We're getting real close.
That's exciting. Yeah.
Yes, of course. But again, thank you to everyone listening. Thank you again to Amanda for coming on the podcast, and we'll see you guys